I restarted my Qigong practice recently. Well, I tried to restart it last year and I started going to a class, but then dragging myself to a class and back is not my idea of something that I can sustain as an exercise. But I see that it has slowly eased me back into my Qigong ways. I did find a very nice lady on social media, and she also gave me ideas how to ease myself in with some very nice, flowy Qigong exercises, mostly in the morning to kind of wake up the lymphatic flow. And from there on, I actually discovered interest and I was excited and enthusiastic, and every time I tell myself, okay, I'm gonna start with just one tiny little thing, and then I just feel so good that I want to do a little bit more and a little bit more. Qigong has been very, very powerful remedy for me for my upper back ache. I suffered so badly many years ago, maybe almost 15 years ago. And that is how I started on the spiritual practice, spiritual growth journey in earnest. Before that, I could spout all the, spiritual wisdoms from other people, but I never practiced and I never had anything that actually I had gone through and experienced. But it's amazing what, you will be motivated to do when the pain hits. And this is not the story I'm going to tell you today. That story actually is already in my book, Effortless Reality, the preface of it. So I'll put the link if you guys want to hear that story, how it all started, the Qigong and the Tai Chi and the Jinshin Jutsu, etc. I'm bringing this up again because of this restarting of my practice. Qigong was actually the practice that eventually helped me clear up my backache. And this is not about how to do it. I know you can find your resources, but it was amazing. It cleared up my backache in 3 days. And for the longest time, I actually did it religiously every day. In fact, I built my practice up to 20 minutes holding the standing like a tree. And all sorts of amazing things actually started emerging. By then, I had already practiced Jinshin Jutsu. In fact, I found Jinshin Jutsu before I found Qigong. And so within a couple of years, I discovered that my Jinshin Jutsu practice on other people or on myself as self-help was much more powerful if I actually took a few minutes before I did Jinshin Jutsu to do some Qigong exercises. There's something there about the clearing and harmonizing of the subtle energetic flow underlying our physical body. And Jinshin Jutsu, I mean, don't get me wrong, I really was hoping that I could clear up the back pain with just simply placing my hands. But it did not. It turned out that what it took was really to do something much more intense, and the standing like a tree was that. The other thing I discovered was how powerful and how immediately physical I could feel the effect of this standing like a tree practice. I remember one day I was dizzy, mysterious dizziness. I don't know what it was. And so I thought, well, I wonder what will happen if I actually stand like a tree. And then the dizziness, after a minute or 2 minutes, the dizziness went away. I was like, yes. But then as soon as I sat on my bed, the dizziness came back. And that is where the scientist kicked in. And I thought, I wonder what happens if I get and hold the standing like a tree again. And I remember I did this 5 times on and off. And every time I would actually place my hands, like standing like a tree, the dizziness would go away. And every time I sat, the dizziness came back. On the 5th round, I got tired. And if you have practiced standing like a tree, that's a very intense practice. You have to build up slowly to those 20 minutes. You can see in what shape I was back 15 years ago. Now I could probably hold it about 1 or 2 minutes, but I'm looking forward to rebuilding that practice and that shape. And so holding it is very intense. So I couldn't do it all day just because it cleared up my dizziness. So I remember at some point I gave up with my science experimentation and I just dragged myself to bed and spent the whole day in bed until the dizziness went away. I did notice that if I drink more water, it clears up things faster. So nowadays I make a conscious effort to hydrate myself for many reasons, and this is one of them, but there's so many more reasons beyond that for us to keep ourselves hydrated, well hydrated nowadays in these challenging times. But here's another interesting experience, physical experience with the Qigong as well. My husband, who's also a PhD in physics and likes puzzles, especially the more complicated algebraic puzzles, I have zero patience with them. I was trained when I was young in high school to do a lot of math competitions and problem solving. And somehow I just didn't have that enjoyment or joy in working through those all algebraic steps. My preference was always for the more abstract branches of mathematics, geometry, stereometry, which is geometry in 3 dimensions, where you can sit on a problem for days. I remember once I actually sat on a problem for 6 months, and then one day I woke up and I said, hey, if I extend this line and I rebuild this like geometrical shape, I saw the solution in my head. It's like, that's it. So you can see I always was my preference was always for those abstract branches where you can sit and then tinker and play with the visuals in your head until you see the solution. It's like, aha, and the solution is one line. But my husband actually likes the puzzles. He likes those long equations, working them out on many, many pages, and he gets a big kick out of coming to me and asking me for to solve those puzzles. We were enjoying ourselves, and so he said, hey, can you solve this puzzle for me? And I was wondering what will happen if I actually sat for a few minutes in standing like a tree. And so I was like, okay, let's do an experiment. So that was my second experiment with the Qigong. And so I sat for a few minutes. I think it was 5, 6, 7 minutes. And I knew what might happen because, again, I had already felt that effect of becoming very centered, very sharp, very much into myself with amazing clarity, almost kind of like your whole being, your whole attention kind of sharpens into one focal point. And of course, I made that focal point the puzzle that day and got the solution immediately. So we got so excited. It's like, okay, let's go find some more puzzles. And for a while, it was puzzles, or sometimes his work especially, involved a lot of advanced mathematics at one point in our lives. And I remember occasionally he would say, hey, let's do your trick again, the Qigong trick. And we went actually with that experiment for quite a bit. And it turned out that anything that he tossed my way, and if I were in the Qigong state, in that exercise, standing like a tree, I can get the answer within 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes. I don't know what it was. We never figured out how it worked, but it did work. I actually stopped eventually because I kind of got, a better sense of what we're doing. And I said, listen, whatever it is, should we be spending our most precious energies into solving some equations or even puzzles that lead to nowhere? Shouldn't we be using that energy for something, world peace or helping the underprivileged people? So anyway, I got that sense of like, okay, you've proven your point. Now you know what you can do. Let's go use it in a productive, humanistic way, because I, deep down in my heart, I knew that I hadn't been born on this planet to solve the next puzzle, the next math challenge and get the field medal. That's the Nobel Prize for math, people, if you don't know. No, I knew that's not my path. And so to me, it's like, what are you doing? You're going somewhere where it's not your path. For someone whose path was there, that might be a valid way to continue practicing. And so this is not to say this is right or wrong, but more about a question of appropriateness. I knew it in my heart that it was not appropriate for me at that time because my path lay elsewhere. And so why do I talk about Qigong and standing like a tree? Because today I was thinking about how that works. And the solutions, when I got to those solutions while I practiced the Qigong and the standing like a tree, it is not like a brute force thing. There's an aspect of removal, not addition. When we have our problems during the day, when we have dilemmas, when we have to make very important decisions, we have been brainwashed by this world to seek advice, seek another advice, call your friends, call your mom, call your cousin, then check again, add more and more in an attempt to find your solutions. But my practice with the Qigong actually proved to me that the solutions actually come through a process of removal. You remove the distractions, you remove the noise, you remove all the splashing of energy, the constant irritants around, and that is where we go to the concept of stillness. This is what the ancient Chinese people talked about it, I bet. At least that's what I think. But it is about in that moment of stillness, and it doesn't have to take a long time to be in that moment of stillness. You're not solving some advanced, complicated mathematical equation. Sometimes it's like, okay, shall I say yes or no to my friend? And they're asking me for this. It's the sitting still, 1 second, 1 moment, 1 minute. You don't have to even be to do Qigong or sit still in a standing like a tree position. Granted, standing like a tree position will probably get you faster or maybe more spectacular. It is a very amazing practice. But I have had so many countless experiences where all I need was just the remembrance of being still. And then the answers will come. Here, I'll finish with this story. Actually, is also in my book, Effortless Reality. But the first time when I actually consciously remembered to stay still and ask for guidance, it was not even exactly quite stand still, but it is be still. And back then, I still needed that aspect of, okay, I'm going to ask for guidance. Holy Spirit for me, because I am a student of A Course in Miracles. So that's my favorite symbol that I work with. And the first time when I remembered to actually stay still was like a Friday night, just like today, Friday afternoon. And I had this colleague at work who we had a good relationship with the colleague, but he had some frustrating tendencies. He would be very self-centered. He was very skillful in always pulling everything towards what benefited him, what kind of showcased his own abilities, his own efforts, so he could subtly hijack other people's efforts or diminish those efforts. So because of that, I always kept my guard up, but at the same time, for some reason, he kind of liked me. So I remember someone had brought his ire. It was not me, someone else. Some issue was going on, and he had taken me as his confidant. And I remember it's a Friday afternoon in a community college where a lot of the teaching professors don't even work on Friday. Friday is dead unless you're administrator or staff. The teaching professors are gone. Good luck catching them unless they have Friday classes. But most of them preferred not to have Friday classes. And so it's a completely dead afternoon, and I get this email from him, and he's ranting, and it's like, how about this? How about that? We should do this. And I remember that was the very first time I walked to my bedroom. I sat in my bed, and I told the Holy Spirit, it's like, okay, Holy Spirit, I finished all the lessons of A Course in Miracles, and I know how they end. After the last lesson, there's a little paragraph that says, this is not the end, this is the beginning. You will be given everything that you need. You promised. And that's what I actually ranted in my head. It's like, you promised you're going to give me everything that I need. How would you respond to this email? How would you handle this person? It's Friday afternoon. And then I sat and I was very quiet. And it was literally just a few moments. The moment I actually finished my own rant and I remained in stillness without even doing my standing like a tree, the answer came. And the answer was like, why respond? It just cracked me up because the Holy Spirit has a sense of humor. If you have worked with the Holy Spirit or with any spiritual guides, you'll know that was one of the most shocking things I discovered for myself when I finally got into the spiritual life. I had totally completely different picture of what spirit is, what those spiritual advanced beings are, being very serious, uh, very lofty, none of that. So anyway, but I was cracking up, and the irreverence of it, saying, you don't have to answer. It's Friday afternoon. Nobody's checking email. And indeed, I just ignored it. That was the first time I also thought that, wow, I discovered the amazing art of not answering to people immediately. Just because someone is screaming that it's an urgency doesn't make it urgency for you. And look, there's situations, I don't want to get you into trouble, right? So there's situations when you do have to answer, but even in those situations, you always, in my experience so far, I have always had the 1 second where I can actually bring myself in. And remember, in the spiritual realms, there are no times. So for you, it might be 1 second. What can happen? For them, it's more about your mindset and your intention. Even if it's a millisecond, the very fact that you are able to pause and invite or ask for help means you're open, and they'll never violate your sense of freedom and agency by constantly telling you what to do. The rule, it's a spiritual rule. Your guides help, but you have to ask first.